Back on TYT Sports with Francis, Jason, and Robin Black from the Fight Network. Welcome back, Robin. As always, if you didn't check out our UFC 202 main event recap, please check out that clip as well. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of, we went deep, 20 minutes or so, into
talking
possibly
about paintings and stuff.
We did.
It was
We're
deep,
not even
man.
going to go.
It.
We're not going to even tease you more than that. You want to learn about masterpieces? Go watch that clip. In terms of what's next for Conor McGregor and Nate Diaz. Now, this fight was the landscape-changing fight of the UFC because based on what happened in this result, especially for Conor McGregor, everything could either go up, down, sideways, left, right. There was a lot to lose for McGregor. There wasn't necessarily all that much to lose for Nate Diaz in this fight because Nate Diaz saw his payday, which we alluded to earlier in the recap itself. But I wanted to get into Dominic Cruz from Fox UFC analyst, fighter, of course, too. And I got this, by the way, from the Fight Network's videos and quotes after UFC 202. Quote, "This fight is going to be a trilogy. This made McGregor a better champion. He'll grow from it. It'll make both better in the long run. The next matchup will even be better. Both went to the body early and often. One of the differences was the adjustments Conor made from the first fight. We haven't seen Nate Diaz make the adjustments from their first matchup with the leg kicks and the counters. This is a game of inches, and Conor made the adjustments, but Diaz didn't. What's interesting about that is he immediately stated it's going to be a trilogy. Robin, I'm pretty sure you agree, but you said in the recap, you also alluded to it might just not happen immediately. What is the next fight for Conor McGregor if it's not Nate Diaz next?
I have a feeling it won't be Nate immediately, and Nate Diaz coincidentally said, "I ain't doing shit until this next fight." Like, he just made $2 million plus pay-per-view points. So when we're talking about the money these guys made, they made points on the pay-per-view. I've heard Conor makes $2 a pay-per-view, but it's very possible Nate may make at least one. So there's another million plus. There's all kinds of money rolling in. If you're Nate Diaz, he and his brother, they want big fights. You know, those things that you wear around your belly with shiny gold stuff says UFC, those belts, they don't really care about those. And they care about big fights, big money fights, fights they can get excited about. So he probably wants to fight Conor right now. But I think for McGregor, it makes sense to do something else. One fight people aren't talking about, but I'm getting these little inklings that it's being explored, is George St. Pierre and Conor McGregor.
Oh.
Now, and I mean just little inklings, just popping up here, little bits of conversation I'm picking up on there. But at least that's one McGregor would want to explore. And GSP has said, did I say George St. Pierre versus Conor McGregor? I've been talking about it for days, so it's been a ton. George St. Pierre has said that he could make 155. He's also said he'd fight Michael Bisping at 185. But if George is coming back, there's a show in Toronto in December. Can you imagine Conor McGregor, George St. Pierre?
I mean, Francis, if you will.
We both are so anxious to get into it because we have a list of the next possible fights. We had Eddie Alvarez discussed. We have going back down and fighting Jose Aldo because according to Dana White, he's given him somewhat of an ultimatum that if he doesn't go back down and fight Jose Aldo, he has to give up his belt. And then Conor McGregor, in Conor McGregor fashion, in the press conference states, if you want an undisputed featherweight, if you want an undisputed champion at that weight class who has been knocked out by me in 13 seconds, I don't think that looks well. So he was responding to it, saying that you shouldn't make him make the decisions. But if he was to fight GSP, it is a McGregor type of fight. It's something that's going to, for some, how it's possible, I don't know, that he can surpass what he's just kind of put on him and Nate Diaz together, that beautiful masterpiece that we were talking about. But it is a McGregor fight. It's something that will kind of whet his appetite to go and fight a legend in the UFC world that considered to many to be the best of all time.
I think Robin's trying to just break the internet.
I know. I think he's trying to break the news.
Trying to set the world on fire with GSP. Of course, we would all love that. I mean, the people's champion, George St. Pierre, is his power to get into the octagon again, let alone how many diehard MMA fans have been waiting and dreaming of like the Michael Jordan-esque comeback to the NBA is what GSP would be to coming back to the octagon. I also love how it's like he'll go and fight Bisping at 185. He'll fight McGregor at 155. He'll drop 30 more pounds and fight Demetrius Johnson at 125. He'll go to the Bellator and fight at 265. I love how much that GSP is willing to adapt to get back into the octagon and find the right matchup. What's so interesting about that, though, and this is my big takeaway, I think, from this whole from Diaz versus McGregor, I don't know if we're going to see a better fight, and I don't want to like ruin the future of the UFC in this way, but I don't know if we're ever going to see a better fight than that second Diaz-McGregor fight. Maybe in the trilogy, maybe at 155, but matching up McGregor against Aldo again, is the one I really want to see, because if the Jose Aldo that showed up in his last fight against Frankie Edgar shows up against Conor McGregor, that's a very interesting and compelling fight.
Yeah.
They're also going to be standing up toe-to-toe with each other, similarly in a way that how Nate Diaz and how Conor McGregor wanted Nate Diaz to stand toe-to-toe with him. But the defensive spectacle that Jose Aldo put on against Edgar would be a notoriously interesting fight to see Conor McGregor match up against, because, again, yes, Aldo got knocked out in 13 seconds. We're completely aware of this. And McGregor does make a very good point in the fact that why would I have to go and release my belt when I beat this guy in 13 seconds? But a full fight against Jose Aldo is something that people still forget was a 8, 9, 10-year champion of that division, and until McGregor showed up, there wasn't anybody who can touch him. Yeah. So if that Aldo shows up, the untouchable one, that's an interesting fight as well.
Yeah, I did not expect Aldo to look as good as he did against Frankie. And you talk about adaptability, you talk about recreating your entire collection of tools and weapons and your game plan and your approach and all that kind of stuff. He was a completely different fighter against Frankie. The last number of years, it's been forward pressure, heavy, forward, get you retreating, kick your legs, beat you up, left hook to low kick. He became a prototype. It was a damn good prototype. It was a nearly unbeatable prototype, but it was a prototype. It was the Dede Pederneiras, his coach, built that, and it was him and Barao were the number 1 and number 2 guys in the world with that prototype for years. But eventually all prototypes, all technologies get surpassed, and you started to feel like he was an old technology, when all of a sudden now he's a new technology. He retreated, he invited, he slipped and he countered, he manipulated distance. He was completely different. So I'd love to see that fight. But Dominic Cruz said something off the top you guys made mention of, and he talked about how much better McGregor will be after this. And there's a number of reasons why being forced to go through the fire, find another level at the end of round 2 and through round 3 and come back and win round 4, the skills, being able to now game plan and strategize for specific opponents, all of those things. But one other thing that has changed now is he has wrestled with a man in a fight for 25 minutes who is 190-ish pounds. There's debate over how much Diaz weighed, but any logical person would cut to 170 when they had a size advantage. They would cut from at least 185, regardless of what he says. An intelligent plan would be to walk into that fight with McGregor at 185, 188 pounds, and he appeared visually to be that size. McGregor has now experienced that kind of fight against that big of a guy. These featherweights are going to feel real damn small.
Yeah,
that's true.
You know, they're going to feel like little men when he fights them, but after having trained with 185, 190 pounders for 10 weeks, then fought Diaz for 25 minutes. These guys are just going to be little kids to him now. Yeah. That's the feeling. So that is an interesting thing. He may, whether he fights at featherweight or not, do we want to see him just be enormous by comparison, keep everybody at his reach, play at distance? He doesn't need to chase Aldo. So that game Aldo played against Frankie doesn't really need to exist. He can stay on the outside, make Aldo chase him. We saw what happened last time that took place. So it's an interesting fight, but I don't think it's the fight.
Yeah. I'm as big a McGregor fanboy as they come, right? And I'm not going to sit here and state that McGregor just completely outclassed Jose Aldo in that fight. I stated it when we did the recap. I think it was an ill-prepared Jose Aldo, and it was taken advantage of by a great fighter with unbelievable striking ability. What I do want to make the case is that people saying that Conor McGregor now needs to go here and he needs to go here and do this. I don't think Conor McGregor needs to do anything, right? And I'm sick and tired of hearing the people who are just basically stating and calling out that they want McGregor to prove something else. I don't think McGregor has anything else to prove. I think that this fight was such an important fight for him. The only thing bigger than McGregor himself in the octagon, throwing all those the things that he does in there, is his ego. And his ego was hurt the last fight. He didn't like the fact that the media was writing him off. Not a lot of people gave him a chance in this fight either. So he came in fighting against a bigger man. We don't really know the specific weight that Nate Diaz was at, but he was definitely heavier, longer reach, taller man, and he's proven that he can handle it and go the distance in the octagon, so that you can tick that off the box. People are talking about how his ground game is still questionable. Let's not forget that he beat Chad Mendes, a notoriously well-rounded wrestler who took him to the ground several times, was still able to wiggle free and win that fight. Beating Jose Aldo is still something that I would like to see him go and do. Not to prove anything, because he doesn't have to prove anything. I would find it to be an intriguing fight, seeing how well Jose Aldo performed against Frankie Edgar, the parts of his game that he adapted, and I think Jose Aldo's a worthy champion, that he deserves another chance to prove that. Now, Conor McGregor is a fighter that is going to be attracted based on what people want to see. He is just as much a people's champion, I think, not in terms of his overall accolades as GSP, let's not get ahead of ourselves, but the fact is that he likes to please the audience and give them a show, give them something that they want to come back to and see. That's why he is such an enormous fighter. So when it comes down to his next steps, I don't think that it's right in terms of Dana White trying to push an ultimatum. Because McGregor, as much as people have stated that Diaz in the past has came in and taken that fight, McGregor in the past has adapted 3 different times. He's had to adapt to cancellations. It's not just the other fighter that has to adapt and come in at short notice. It's the person who's been training. He was training to try and go fight Dos Anjos, a completely different fighter than Nate Diaz. So this time, he was able to train and adapt and perform, and that's why I'll give him so much credit for the things that he did in that fight. Now, the next fight that comes up for him, if we're going to rank it in terms of Robin's outlandish possible fight that I would love to see him fighting GSP, I wouldn't be able to sleep 2 weeks in advance. I would be so excited for that. I would like to see it. What I think is a realistic option next for Conor McGregor, I do think it's going to be a shock to his own system to come back down and fight someone who doesn't have a reach like Nate Diaz. I mean, any fight, I think, after Nate Diaz, it's not going to be easier. I'm not stating that, but it's going to be something that's completely on the other end of the spectrum. Nate Diaz adapts as the fight goes on. He comes in, I think Nate Diaz comes in with a plan, but he is so willing to change it and just go in and tough it out and throw punches and go toe-to-toe. Whereas if he goes to fight Jose Aldo now, Jose Aldo has got his tail between his legs after fighting McGregor the last time. He was rocked. His whole world crumbled. People were consistently ragging on Jose Aldo after that. And since that moment, everything Jose Aldo has done has been to call McGregor back in. Fighting Frankie Edgar was a spectacle that McGregor didn't find to be too appealing. I actually thought the opposite. I thought it was, if I was McGregor, I would be taking a second look at Jose Aldo because he performed efficiently, very similar to how McGregor performed just recently against Diaz. He didn't go out there to put on the spectacle and everyone are gasping at a knockout. Jose Aldo was so efficient. He was a machine in there, and Frankie Edgar couldn't touch him. I would personally like to see that fight.
I wanted to see that fight the first time they got together. But in terms of what's next for McGregor, you make the good point. It is going to be on McGregor's terms.
Yeah.
Dana White is drooling at the mouth. Dana White did say immediately after the fight that in Dana White fashion, if I could find the quote itself, I know he alluded to the fact that there might be a trilogy. There it is. We're not doing this a third time right now. Conor's going to defend his title or give it up. I have no idea what's next for Nate. Such a Dana White thing. Of course there's going to be a trilogy at some point, whether it's next year, whether it's in 5 years, whether it's in 25 years, and they're doing it for charity. These two will be in the octagon again at some point because there is simply too much money to be made, and we know how Dana White works with that.
Well, they are connected for life, and that is a very good thing if you're a fight fan. I wish I could talk to you guys all day. It's such a pleasure to chat fighting with you, but they're throwing me out of the studio right away. But thank you guys so much for the great chat.
Of course.
Right,
Thanks,
Robin.
Rob. Make sure to check out Robin over at the Fight Network and on Twitter, Robin Black MMA. On top of that, get this man Twitter verified. I saw it trending on Saturday night while it was going on for UFC 202. So make sure to check him out over there and the Fight Network on YouTube. At Francis_Maxwell, at JasonUber91 in terms of us. And make sure to check out a recap of UFC 202, also featuring Robin.
I got one chance.